without you, God, but with you we can do all things. Thank you for all our officials. Thank you for every home, every family that's represented here today. And Heavenly Father, we just want to glorify you in everything we do. And all we want to say right now is amen, amen, and amen.
Thank you, Pastor Randall. At this time, we will have Chief David Zachariel of the Texas City Fire Department, who will present the memorial to the firefighters. Chief Zachariel.
Welcome. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Texas City Fire Department welcomes each of you to this very special event as we pay tribute here in honor of 27 firefighters who responded to their last alarm on April 16, 1947, 75 years ago, in protection of this great community as they had so many times before. This is a day of remembrance, honor, respect, and praise of our fallen brothers who gave of themselves in final sacrifice, and to survivors who would never forget nor let Texas City perish and fade away following the most devastating industrial disaster in our nation's history. It is the custom of the fire service across the world to acknowledge the ultimate sacrifice, the laying down of one's life for another, by recitation of the names of our fallen firefighters, followed by a tolling of the fire bell. The fire bell you will hear tolling here today is the same bell that was mounted on the fire department's 1926 Southern fire apparatus that responded to the fire aboard the Grandamp on April 16, 1947. In honor of those firefighters, Henry J. Baumgartner, Fire Chief. Joseph Milton Brady. Lloyd George Kane. Zolan Davis. Roy Louis Durio. Archie Boyce Emshoff. Henry John Finazine. Virgil D. Faraday. Edward Henry Henriksen. William Fred Hughes. William Carl Johnson. Frank P. Jolly. William Lewis Kaiser. Jacob Otto Meadows. Harvey Alonzo Mengi. Maurice R. Neely. Sebastian B. Nunez. William C. Sullivan. Marcel Pennycuff. William D. Pennycuff. Jimmy Reddix. Robert D. Smith. Joel Clifton Stafford. Marshall B. Stafford. Marion D. Westmoreland. Clarence J. Wood. Clarence Rome Vestal. And in 1999, Captain William M. Bethune. May God bless each of them and all of you. And now we will present the caps and post of flowers.
have assembled today, we are grateful. So very grateful. It's a privilege to stand before you on this day to commemorate this 75th Diamond Jubilee anniversary of what is known as the 1947 Texas City disaster. If you have lived in this community for any significant period, then you don't need an explanation as to what happened on that dreadful day of 1947. But for those of you here who are relatively new to the community, or those of you who may be viewing online, let me just say it was one of the most horrific moments and the deadliest industrial accidents in the history of our nation. Around 8:30 a.m. on the morning of April 16, 1947, a ship named the SS Grandamp was docked at the port of Texas City, and it was picking up and carrying a substance called ammonium nitrate. Over 2,000 tons of it, which was used for both fertilizer and ammunition. There were other cargo on board, bundles of twine contained at the port. At approximately 9:12 a.m., the first explosion happened. By 9:30 a.m. that morning, a chain of explosions on the port began, destroying not only the SS Grandamp, but an adjacent ship, the High Flyer. That set off explosions of nearby industries that were producing hazardous chemicals. Monsanto refinery was totally destroyed. Burning shrapnel and bales of twine flew through the skies at supersonic speeds, spreading fire through the city and leveling hundreds of buildings. The anchor from the SS Grandamp was found over 1.5 miles away from the blast site. And that very anchor is at this park on here displayed today. Official casualties estimates came to a total of 567, including all the crewmen aboard the SS Grandamp. All but one of the 28-man Texas City Volunteer Fire Department were killed in the initial explosion on the docks while fighting the shipboard fire. It seemed like a city with so much promise was all but destroyed in one day, reduced to rubble in one incident. But like many of the stories I tell from time to time, this is not how it ended. Because although this disaster was historic, one of the most horrific ever, in fact, it did not destroy us all. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the message that I want to leave with you today. That's the message I want to concentrate on, a message of life, a message of rebirth, a message of rebuilding. That never die attitude, the spirit of the phoenix, a bird in Greek mythology that is said to live beyond the sun in this place called paradise. The mythological story is told of this immortal bird. It flies west to Arabia and Phoenicia and other fine lands to gather the finest materials and herbs and spices to build its nest. And as the sun gods of mythology ride across the sun in their chariots, they drip droplets of sun, and one fell upon the nest of the phoenix. It drops upon the spices and the twigs that it was gathering, and it ignites in fire. The entire nest is destroyed, including the phoenix itself. All of the phoenix and its nest are destroyed, and as fire rages on for 3 days, 3 days later, the phoenix rises. It rises from the ashes of its royal nest to fly again back to paradise and live another 1,000 years. This cycle is repeated, and some say the phoenix never dies. Some say the phoenix does in fact die, but it is reborn. In 1997, our former mayor, Charles Doyle, he decided to use that symbol during the 50-year celebration of the disaster. A 12-foot, half-inch poured steel phoenix statue was erected in the Phoenix Fountain here today in Texas City. In 1947, immediately after that disaster, Mayor Curtis Strahan established the Texas only to be destroyed again in 1947 by the Texas City disaster. In 1949, the showboat was rebuilt yet again. And it stayed open until the mid-1970s. In the mid-1970s, it finally closed its doors and it stayed abandoned and empty. And it was deemed substandard and unsafe to use by